Welcome to the business of being healthy, where we are passionate about treating our health as good as we treat our wealth. Shelly Bryan here, and I am obsessed with sharing real life experiences and wisdom to help save you time, heartache, and money as you continue to grow personally and professionally. Twice a week, we push aside that BS to take massive intentional action. And I promise by tuning in, you will receive the straightforward talk you've been waiting for, filled with actionable steps that will inspire you to achieve the health and wealth you desire while you are building your empire. Welcome back to another episode here on the business of being healthy. I am excited to have you here today because this one is literally hot off the press. I was attending I don't want to call it a networking group, but it is a networking group. However, it's much more than that. It's not like there was no referral expectation or anything like that. It's a group of business owners who happen to be women. We all come together once a month. This meeting probably had about 120 people at it. And there's one gal that I've just gotten to know a little bit more. And she, the more that I get to know her, I'm like, wow, she is so great. Really love her. And when I saw her today, we started a conversation like most of us start conversations. How are you? Right. And in these large group settings, we can kind of go, oh, we're fine. Oh, I'm good. Thanks. How are you? Like keep it like very top line. I'm not about top line. If you've been here listening to the show, you know that is not what I am about. And her response just triggered a story, and it triggered something that I just thought was so important that I wanted to record this and bring this episode out so quickly. I was like, hey, how are you doing? And her response was above average. And I sat there and I smiled and I'm like, well, dang, that's great. Because, another typical one I hear is, I've got nothing to complain about. And I'm like, no one wants to hear your complaint anyway. So great. But when she hit me with above average, I stopped. It stopped me in my tracks. And the reason why I want to bring this up today on today's episode, I'm dedicating an episode to this, is because the words we use have power and meaning. And it's not just for you, it's for those that are listening. And so when she said above average, that triggered a memory for me. And that's what I want to share today, but I'm going to tie this all in a bow, so stick around till the end. So when she said above average, I thought this is a conversation that I had with Jax lately, who is my son. Hopefully you follow me on social media, so you're in it with all my family. But he, when we transition schools, there's a learning curve, of course, and his grade slipped a little bit and he had a C in one of his classes. And I looked at him with the grades, and with us, academics is very important. However, life is too, experiences, and we wanted to give him the grace to be able to transition in the school. And so, of course, C's in my book are not acceptable. And I just looked at him, and it wasn't like a berating. I just looked at him and I said, well, a C is average. I go, are you average? And he kind of like looked at me, obviously not what he was expecting. And I go, you do boys gymnastics. I'm like, or men's gymnastics now, excuse me. Jax caught me on that one, but men's gymnastics team. He is practicing. I go, you're practicing 16 hours a week. You have now transitioned into a higher, tougher academic school. I said, you are in band. He plays the drums. You are an amazing big brother. You are an incredible son. I started listing all these things. I go, does that sound average? And he's like, no. And I go, well, C is average. And I go, that doesn't sound like you. And he's like smiling at this point and nodding his head, looking at me. And he's like, gotcha, Mom. No problem. And he like moved on. And it was just such a turning point. And I shared this story actually with the gal today because it just triggered just such a great memory that we the words we use have power and meaning. And sometimes when we don't necessarily pay attention, not intentionally, or just not cognizant of the words that we're using, it can really change the entire experience. So she changed the entire experience for me by saying above average. And that had a special meaning to me. Then I also shared how I used the term average with my son, not you have a C. I was like, this is telling me you're average. I don't believe that you're average, and gave him proof to show him that he's not. And it was one of those times that I just thought that this message needed to be heard, because too often we go throughout our day and we kind of fall into these routines. You guys, we are coming, like here in Arizona, school started back up. We have our routines. We're falling back into them, which is good because routines are good. That being said, if we don't cognitively review some of the things that we do on a daily basis, things can slip. And so if we start paying attention, one of the things I always talk about is like when you walk in a room, how can you add value into that room? Today, she added value to me because she reminded me about the words that we use have such power. And I wanted to share this because as we are getting, started here in the second half of the year, well, we're in it, but as we finish up the year, keep that reflection, keep that intention high with the words that you're using to describe the activities that you're doing. By no means, I hope you're not hearing that you're walking into the room being like, everything's great, wonderful, exciting. If it is, great, but be real. And I love that she used, I am above average. And so I know this is a short one today, but as I close it out, I just wanted to say to you, are you above average? Are you average? Are you below average? I know that if you're listening to this show, that you are above average. That's why I can have these conversations. That's why I can share these tips. I can share these experiences because I know that these might trigger a memory. They might trigger an experience, and they might challenge you not to fall into kind of old habits and actually level up in a new way. And so, here on the Business of Being Healthy show, that we are all about showing that commingling, that collaboration between health and business. And the words that we use is very important when it comes to that. So when you leave the gym, when you have a great meal, when you even have an average meal, make sure you're using the words that describe it, that will set the intention of how you want to feel through it. So thank you again for joining me on this quick one. If this maybe kind of struck a chord with you, right? Or maybe you had this conversation with a friend, or maybe you have that friend that always just says, oh, I'm fine, things are good, or nothing to complain about here. Share this episode with them. Help them, elevate their game, help them become a better version of themselves. And as always, remember, we are in the business of being healthy, and we are all about leveling up in both areas. Thanks so much for joining.